Okay, well, I'm super excited about this, Clint. Thank you
Thanks,
for giving us the privilege of chatting with you a little bit on the podcast.
Sure. I don't know if it'll be a privilege on the other side of it. It was like, God, what was that? But I love this. I feel very fortunate to have kind of had this kind of Forrest Gumpian kind of life that I've had, and the opportunity to kind of steward those stories and talk about the people I've learned something from. It's a privilege, and to do it in a one of the more intentional buildings I've ever been in, run an intentional practice. It's fun. It's stewardship's a big deal to me, and this feels like an opportunity to steward the things I've learned.
I appreciate it. I've enjoyed learning from you, and I remember the first time I met you about 10 years ago at Merrill Lynch, and hearing your story, and it's super inspiring. So I hope to share a little bit of that today. For those not familiar with Clint Bruce, a little bit about him: former U.S. Navy SEAL officer, inducted in the Navy Marine Corps Stadium Hall of Fame. Former NFL player, entrepreneur and leadership speaker, founder of Hold Fast Harbor and Carry the Load nonprofit organizations honoring military members, veterans, and first responders, and really recognized for the focus on purpose-driven leadership and resilience.
Yeah.
My first question...
That dude sounds cool. I don't know who that is.
He does. I'm excited.
He sounds awesome. Let's get him here.
You've intentionally spent your life, it seems like, taking the harder route.
Yeah.
You've built your whole life, it seems like, not choosing the easy way.
Yeah.
Why is that?
My daughters could answer this for you because they've heard the lecture so many times. I kind of have this that you got to run at the hard things, and because if you run, when in doubt, choose the harder thing as long as it's virtuous. Because at minimum, you're going to learn a lot about yourself, because that's the only time we learn about ourselves, right? And it's often the only time we learn about the people alongside us. So at the minimum, you're just going to learn a lot about yourself. At the maximum, you're going to learn about yourself and do the hard thing, right? And so to use our time, which none of us know how much we have, doing anything other than learning about ourselves, learning about others, and trying to do hard things, just to me seemed kind of wasteful. It didn't seem like stewardship. And I think when you kind of dealt with mortality as much as I and a lot of the people, I'm not unique in this, but at a very young age, I came to grips very quickly with the concept of, I don't know how much time I have. I don't know how much time I have with these people doing this thing. And at the end of the day, I either stole or I stewarded the time that was given to me. And so for me, I became obsessed very early with, and success doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's just, did I steward the time? All I can control is, did I steward my time or did I steal my time? And I'm not 100% on the steward versus steal perspective. But I feel like in retrospect, I've certainly stewarded more than I've stolen. And so in order to steward my time, I got to be doing hard stuff, right? And so I think, and there's a little bit of a story that I guess I'll go ahead and tell.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so the story is this. But I won't say their real names because they'll probably watch this. But when I was growing up in Garland, Texas, when I was growing up, if you were in love with a girl, you toilet papered their house. That's how you said I love you. And it rarely worked. And so it was like my first special operations missions. Me and Derek and Ryan, and I won't say their last names, broke out of my house, snuck across the neighborhood, started toilet paper in this girl's house. And it felt like 2 o'clock at night. It was probably like 9:30 or 10 or something. We were, I think, 11 or 12. And we're doing this, and all of a sudden we hear these dogs kind of barking at us, and we turn and look, and over the crest of this hill comes the 2 biggest dogs I've ever seen in my entire life. And
while you're toilet paper?
Yeah, while we were toilet paper. Okay. And they had like wings and breathing fire. Probably not, but that's what I saw. Now, I knew Ryan was fast. I was aware of that. I did not realize how fast Derek was until we started trying to run away from these dogs. Yeah. So there's chubby little Clint. I look like Vern from Stand By Me. And Derek's gone. I lost sight of Ryan probably 30 seconds ago. And I have this moment where I go, I'm not going to get away from these dogs. There's just no way. There's nothing to climb. There's nothing to hide behind. And so in mine, the only thing I could do is just run at the dogs. So I stopped turning. I started running at these dogs.
Are these big dogs, or are these like
in my mind, they're the biggest dogs that ever existed.
Okay.
In retrospect, if like someone had like footage of this, they might have been corgis or something. I hope not. But in my mind, they were like the Rottweilers from The Omen.
Okay,
like that movie. Yeah. And so I started running these dogs, and there's a clear moment where these dogs started barking, and they started looking at each other like, row, row, row. And then they just turned and ran. Because they're like, we don't know what's happening, but he's not scared anymore, and he's running at us, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, that's kind of been a metaphor always, like run at the hard stuff and run at the things that scare you, because you either dictate the terms of your conflict and the timing of your conflict, but sometimes scary things flinch too.
Yeah.
And so for me, that whole run at the hard stuff is kind of a lived experience that proved itself in the moment, and has really kind of continued to prove itself ever since on all the maps I've lived on.
Makes sense. And then I'm assuming one of the first hard things you did was the NFL. And
yeah.
I know we talked
that was like
earlier.
the fifth hardest thing. Right? like for me, like the first hardest thing for me was like still playing football. We were joking before we turned the cameras on about kind of the arc of my football career. Mm-hmm. And if you have any clients or anybody that was in South Garland in the late '80s, they would agree with this. I was so bad at football that my coach told me to stop wasting his and my time and go to theater. Which I was a fifth string fullback in 8th grade, and there's only 3 other fullbacks on the team, so that's kind of damning out of the gate. And I remember my dad saying, "Son, I'm not disappointed you're the fifth string fullback. I am disappointed that they put it in the program." I'm like, "What? They wrote in the program 1, 2, 3, blank 5," and so I had to make a decision. I wasn't going to be good at football, but how do I not die during football, right? And so for me, I just kind of came up with this process that helped me keep doing the hard things. This is where my friends are. I want to be a part of something bigger than myself, and I tell people that not being good at football is what made me good at football. Because on scout team, you get 3 to 4 reps for every 1 rep the talented guys get. So for 3 years, I was getting 4 snaps for every 1 snap the more gifted guys were doing. And in scout team, you play all these different positions,
sure.
Right? So, you're playing guard, you're doing all these other things. And what I didn't realize at the time is I was amassing these 10,000 repetitions in this game called football. And for me, it all kind of crescendoed halfway through my junior season. We were playing J.J. Pierce High School, and we were up by a lot. One guy got kicked off the team, another guy got hurt. And my position coach will tell you to this day that he didn't want to make eye contact with the head coach when he put me in because he thought I was going to get in trouble. And it gets worse. My father was up in the stands, and it's on camera. On camera, everybody goes, "Richard, Clint's in. And on camera, my dad goes, "Clint's not in. Clint's never in. I come here and I film y'all's kids, and y'all give me a hard time and get me all excited. And all of a sudden you hear this sack made by Clint Bruce," because I don't remember the play that was called because I didn't get reps. But I remember looking at the guard and go, "Hey, when I play guard on scout team, if I'm going to pull, I sit back on my heels a little bit, so I bet he's pulling." I just shot the gap, made the sack. And the game made sense to me every day since then. Because I never really left the field in college and, rest of high school, college. But it was only because I wasn't good, right?
Yeah.
And so not being good helped me be good. And so I think maybe the first hardest thing I ever really did was deciding to play a game that clearly did not care whether I played it or not. Yeah. And I'm grateful for that early foundation.
Makes sense. And how did that transition go from NFL to finally, reaching the NFL and then switching it up to becoming
That's a great question.
Something harder, man.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. So, I was very, very fortunate to have a really great career at the Naval Academy, and I'm very grateful for my time at the Naval Academy playing football. And I was a varsity player for 4 years at a Division I football program. And there's really only 2 reasons someone's a varsity football player for 4 years: is you're really, really good, or the team you join is not really, really good. So you can Google Navy football early 90s records and be like, "Oh, that's why." But I had some amazing teammates, and then all of us, there's just kind of like this awesome kind of serendipity. There's there's quite a few guys that could have played a bunch of other places, okay, but for whatever reason, we wanted to go to service academy. I wanted to go because I told my dad I would, and I wanted to go somewhere that was hard, and I loved the Army-Navy game, and I always wanted to serve my nation, and the thought of NFL just hadn't really occurred to me. Not because I didn't want to, it just didn't seem to matter as much to me as service.
Did you not think that you had a realistic shot at it?
I don't think it was that. I didn't think that far.
Okay.
I was like, hey, I'm going to go play ball. And statistically, I know I've got less of a chance to go to the NFL, but I know I have an opportunity. And I always want to be a Navy SEAL, right?
Yeah. And
it's actually a fun thing. I did Marcus Luttrell's podcast one time, and it was kind of right after COVID. And for years, I always struggled with answering the question, hey, when did you first want to be a Navy SEAL? Because I just couldn't remember not wanting to be one. There just wasn't this, genesis moment where I remembered, that's what I want to be until COVID. So COVID happened, and there wasn't a lot of good that came out of COVID. other than I got to spend a tremendous amount of time with my kids. Like I logged so much time with my daughters. And my oldest daughter, she goes, Dad, you want to watch Magnum P.I.? I'm like, yeah, of course I want to watch Magnum P.I. And she put on the new one. I'm like, stop it. Like, we're not watching that. Like, there's certain things you don't remake the Cannonball Runs. You don't remake Smoking the Bandit. You don't remake Magnum
100%.
P.I. You don't remake, Riptide. And
Star Wars.
Simon and Simon. Yeah, exactly. So I took her back to the Magnum PI, the original one. It's actually a really progressive show. I mean, it's one of the first shows that really talked about the concept of, PTSD and all these other things, right? And then, from a racial perspective, Magnum needed TC more than TC needed Magnum, and TC was a black entrepreneur, right? And so it was really kind of a really cool show as you look back at it. But in the second season, there's an episode where they revealed that the character Thomas Magnum played football at the Naval Academy, and he was a Navy SEAL. And all of a sudden, this memory just rushed to the front of my mind, and I remembered watching Magnum PI with my dad, Thursday nights at 8 p.m., Little Rock, Arkansas. And so there's chubby little Clint watching that episode of Magnum PI, and I remember turning to look at my dad and go, hey, Dad, I'm going to play football at the Naval Academy, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. And my dad was like, all right. So, I mean, be careful what you let your kids watch, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's like I said I was going to do it. My dad said okay, so I was never lost. Sure. I had this kind of default, primal, instinctive cardinal direction that even if it kind of ebbed, it was always still there, right? So for me, to go to the Naval Academy was an opportunity to do what I told my dad I'd do, and he had passed away prior to that. But it was just the right place for me, and I joined a team that had current great leaders and athletes, and then the guys so we ended up being probably the best team in Navy football history in 20 years. I mean, they're really good. I don't think I could play for the team now, but went to a bowl game, first bowl game in 20-something years. Played in several all-star games, was really fortunate in that, but I'd also been picked for the SEAL community out of Annapolis, which is really hard. Wow. It was a really tough deal. And I was one of the 16 guys chosen for it. And so I got picked up by the Ravens, and I was playing at the Ravens. And for me, I'd already begun to wrestle with, like, hey, I'm not going to take this billet that someone's given me and not use it. I'm going to steward the trust that's been placed in me. And then also it was 1997, so it was Ray Lewis's second year, and I played middle linebacker too. And I remember watching Ray at practice one time, and I go, and also, it might be easier to become a Navy SEAL than beat out Ray Lewis. And I think I was right. So for me, it was pretty easy. I mean, I went home, and I just got married, and I talked to my bride, and my bride's father was a scout for the Cowboys, and so he kind of knew what the NFL was like. And I told her, I said, hey, I got to do this. Like, what I knew about football is I'm here. Don't know how good I could be. Don't know how long I could stay. But whatever I learn about myself is going to be more what I already know. I got to go where I don't know. I got to go, what's the hardest thing that's the most virtuous thing that I can do right now? Because I got to learn about myself. I'm in my early 20s. And I'm either going to do the thing or I'm going to learn about myself and do the thing. So for me, it was pretty easy to leave. It wasn't a hard thing.
It's interesting. There's a book that sometimes I give it to clients and I give it to all staff by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about that whenever I'm confused about two options.
Do the harder thing.
Exactly. 99% of the time.
As long as it's legal, moral, and ethical, do the harder thing.
That's why it's 99%.
Yeah, like don't do the Bonnie and Clyde. Like, well, the harder thing is to rob a bank. Like, well, let's stop short of that. Let's leave it legal, moral, and ethical, harder thing.
So as you thought of leaving the NFL, going to Navy SEAL, what was that thought process? Was that like inspiring, or did you feel like, dang, I didn't make the NFL?
No, I didn't feel that way at all. Like I was like, hey, this is the harder thing. Like, so for me, and it's interesting because I run into guys I played in the NFL with, like they've got a bunch of stories about my life. I don't have a lot of stories about theirs. And that doesn't mean that the NFL wasn't awesome. It's just I know what it's going to be. I know the story. I've read I didn't live it at the length and the speed and the size and the financials, but it's football. Like it's been the same since we were in Pop
You're
Warner,
in the game.
right? Yeah, and so for me, there's never been any doubt, and there's not ever been a ton of reflection on, man, I wish I would have stayed. I wish I would have, all this other stuff. Everything I love about football was really 10x in the military, and certainly especially, I love the violence, I love the camaraderie, I love the hard things. So everything I loved about football was really a multiple in the military and certainly in the special operations community. So there wasn't much to miss.
What is it? You said you love the violence. What is it? Because it's something you physically can see as opposed to having a 9-to-5 job. You don't really.
I think violence is a great way to figure out if you mean what you say. So I love the violence of it because I go, hey, one of us says we want this more, and let's figure out who it is, right? And not violence for violence sake, but for me, it's the crucible. It's a crucible, and that's the thing I love about football. I had 75 opportunities to figure out who wants it more. Like as a linebacker, about 75, 76 snaps a game. Mm-hmm. So I got 76 opportunities to prove to the people around me and the people watching me that I love them more than you say you love yours, right? And so let's figure it out. And so purposeful, I should probably say that differently. I mean, the purposeful, the physicality of it, man, because you got to do things that will tell you the truth, and violence tells you the truth, right? And because the world will tell a talented man anything they want to hear. And so that's why I love hard things, because hard things are honest things. Yeah. And the more talented you are, that's what I think is so important about your profession. Like your profession, like the people are trusting you to tell them the truth. And sometimes you tell them their baby's ugly, not literally, but like, hey, this portfolio that you set up, it's not. We talked about this yesterday during the volatility of the markets thing. I was like, hey, man, bad times is when someone knows they have a good wealth manager, 100%. Right? And so for me, that's what I love about the weight room. The weights are honest. You know, the weights are the most honest thing in the world. You can lift it or you can't lift it, right? And even if you can lift it, but you don't use the right technique, if you manage to lift it, you're going to hurt yourself. Mm-hmm. So these honest things demand the best of us, right? So that's what I mean when I say love the
makes sense
violence of it. I should probably say that different.
I like how you said
it. I do enjoy the violence of it. It's like I'm good at it.
You know, I've heard so many stories. I'd love for you to share a few of your Navy SEAL experiences and
you know, it's you know, one of the stories that I tell, and it's really not. It's about the people. It's not about the missions. I just, you know, you could swing a bat and hit someone more accomplished than me in the special operations community. And but I love the people I was around, right? And so I was around extraordinary people during really meaningful and impactful times. And the whole concept of called Pursuing Elite, which your people are going to get to hear about, kind of goes back to this moment. We were one of the very, you've heard the story before because I told it back then. Like it was we were already overseas when 9/11 happened. So 9/11 happened, we pivoted right to the Middle East, and we started doing what's called a MEO, a Maritime Interdiction Operation. So VBSS, we're hitting ships in the middle of the night. We were American pirates. It was awesome. It was like I'm an American pirate. This is all legal, right? Like we're good. We can do that, right? I had to ask Jag Harmon Rand over there, and you know, my guys had on eye patches. I'm like, that looks awesome. Take them off, both eyes. So I bought a parrot. It flew away. Yeah, it was pretty sad. And but I felt like this American Blackbeard, and we hit the ship coming out of Rain and Waters one night, and it was just this beautiful moment. It's like being a part of something that was doing what it was built to do, right? And you know, there's a real famous author, rightly famous, named Jack Carr, and so Jack and I were in these units together, and I mean, watching him work and watching, it was like watching water roll downhill. It was just this awesome thing, and it wasn't just men. We had 2 female Marine Corps aviators flying around the ship, and they were so good at their job, and it was just this really, really successful mission. And I remember we're getting ready to disembark and go hit another ship. And for those of you listening to this or watching this that don't know much about the military, in all but the aviation community, the enlisted is where the talent is. The enlisted is what our enemies rightly fear. I mean, that's where the courage, creativity, valor, and initiative are. And aviation community is a little bit different, but broadly everything else, right? And if the enlisted are the backbone, the senior enlisted are the spinal cord. Guns, chiefs, master sergeant. And my chief was incredible. My chief was about 6'3", 240 pounds. He'd been in the SEAL teams for a long time. His dad was a SEAL before then, and he'd actually put me through Hell Week. He was one of my Hell Week instructors, and I just always wanted to earn his trust every day. And I remember we're getting ready to disembark and go hit another ship, and I turned to look, I said, hey, Chief, the boys were excellent. We ought to do something for him. And he got mad. And he leaned in and he turned and looked at me and goes, hey, sir, the reward for excellence is no punishment. I'm not here to be excellent. I'm here to be elite. I'm not done yet. And you've heard me say this before, like all of my life made sense to me up to that moment, and really every day since. Because, like I said, you know, losing my father, when I lost my father, I just started, the way you get to the high ground is always the same. You just find and follow the right people to the right places. You become your version of what you love about them. And And so when I lost my father, I just started picking these qualities in people's lives that reminded me of him, that he wanted for me, that I wanted for myself. And there was unbelievable diversity in who these people were. They're men and women, my friends' moms and dads, teachers, preachers, academics. But when my chief said that, everything made sense to me, because what made them different is they were not done yet. They got to the X on the map. They did what they said what they're going to do, but they found a way to stay restless when others are resting. They found a way to reload when others are relaxing, as a form of stewardship, right? And so for me, those stories of overseas, one of the questions I get asked all the time is, hey, what's your favorite gun? And I always slow down and go, hey, are you asking me what my favorite gun is or what my favorite weapon is? And the younger they are, or the more, like, if your boys be like, oh, it's the same thing. And if they're older, they're more diverse, or you have women in the audience, they kind of know that there's a difference, even if they don't know what it is. And I go, listen, a gun's a tool. A weapon is what I use to win. My favorite weapon is a map. Because once I have a map, I have it all. I know where the bad guy will be, what to come in, what to bring, what to leave, how to get home. If I have a map, the worst I'll ever be is wrong. And why those battlefield moments on the battlefield map matter is what can I pull off of those maps into this boardroom map that I'm on now. And this breakfast table map is my bride and I try to build girls that love us in the matter of the others, right? So that for me is one of those. I mean, it was a cool moment, like we were taking down ships and stuff. But the thing that makes it matter is what my chief taught me then, right? And there's hundreds of others of those kind of moments.
If you were gonna sit down with Clint Bruce as he's becoming a Navy SEAL,
Mm-hmm.
what would you have told him or would you tell him anything? Would you let him struggle? Is there something
I would tell him something very simple. I would say, shut up. I tell people this all the time.
What do you mean, shut up? Like talking back to people?
No. I tell people this all the time. Like, if I could go back and tell the 23-year-old Clint anything, I would tell him to be more courageous in the form of curiosity. Because curiosity is courage. Because the reason we don't ask questions is fear, right? And that's the definition of courage, is action in the face of fear. So if I could tell the 24-year-old Clint anything, I'd say, hey, ask more questions than you want to, and especially the one you want to ask least. And listen longer than you think you have to.
Makes sense.
And I think I'd be here now. I'd do nothing different. I'd do everything differently, right?
Yeah.
But that's what I would tell myself. I like, hey, like, listening is this. I struggle with tremendous insecurity because I'm a guy. Like, I think there's two kinds of men. We both struggle with insecurity. Some of us are honest about it. Some of us aren't, right? And like, for me, listening is a discipline. It's a skill, right? And being a girl dad, three girls and a tired bride of 30 years, for me, it's become it's a skill, just like going to the gun range and stuff like that. And I've had to cultivate these kind of techniques. So, like, I have this 5 rule. So what I've learned with my bride and my daughters is, whenever they're talking about, I can't say anything back until I say 5 times. And it's intensely practical. I go, and there's times I go, boom, go. But there's more times than not where I go, and by that third, like, well, I'm so glad I didn't say anything. Yeah. By the fourth, I'm mad at that girl too. I'm like, well, she said what, right? But for me,
just listen more than fixing.
Because my form of love is protection. Yeah. Like, the way I show you I love you, the way I show you that I'm worth your trust, is I fix stuff, right? And listening has helped me understand kind of what to fix. The fixing is still there. It's just their definition of fixing and not mine. Yeah. But that's what I would tell myself. And it's something I tell myself every day. But I wish I would have told myself to ask more questions and be a better listener sooner. Because one of the things you'll see, if you go into really, really elite units, in the back of your mind, you think all the cool kids are in the back of the class. You walk into a Tier 1 unit, you walk into a Special Missions unit or a Joint Interagency Task Force, and the best operators, the most seasoned, experienced, the graybeards, they're sitting up front asking the most questions. Yeah. And I've seen this. So on the battlefield, that's true. On the ball field, it's true. I've been fortunate. I worked with Florida State, LSU, and Ohio State, all when they won their national championships. And I remember working with Ohio State the year before when they won their national championship. And I'll go in and I'll talk to the team, and a lot of times the coaches will leave and it'll just be me and the players. And I just had this amazing conversation with, like, Mecca. These are just some profoundly wise young men, far wiser than I was when I was their age. And I remember going and talking to Coach Day after that. I said, hey, man, I'm not telling you the future, but I will tell you there's only 2 other teams where the best players and the youngest players ask me those kinds of questions. Yeah. I mean, authentic, vulnerable question in front of their teammates. And it was Florida State when they won their national championship, and Derwin James was the guy asking the question. It was LSU, and it was the Honey Badger. So I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen, but I am going to tell you that when your youngest and your best are curious, you're going to win. It's just a question of when, right? And so, you know, I just find curiosity to be for me, curiosity is a superpower, because questions are courage reps. And every time you ask a question, you're repping that courage muscle and you're making them strong, right? And so curiosity is one of the only ways I know to like strength train for courage. Disadvantage yourself, put yourself in a fear state and work through it, yeah. Right? And, you know, my daughters, when they were young, it's my weekly chat with them. They turned 10 and we go on a quick trip. And I say, hey, for the rest of your life, I'm going to ask you on Friday, did you do it? And what I'm asking you if you did is, every week, I want you to ask one person you don't know 3 questions, and 3 people you don't know 3 people you already know 1 question you never asked them before. And my daughters are famous for what they know about their friends, what they know about other people. My daughters are also famous for being the girls that go, hey, why are we going here? Like, why are we doing that? Like, they'll ask the question. And for me, curiosity is the first evidence of courage, right? Yeah. And so why didn't I ask questions as a somewhat accomplished, you know, college football player? And because I wanted, like, to this day, I'm a 52-year-old man. I'm somewhat accomplished. And to this day, when I'm in a room full of people that I respect and admire, I still have a knot in the pit of my stomach when I have a question, because I just rather you think I know. Yeah. I'm afraid of the answer. I'm afraid of the work that comes to the answer. I'm afraid of admitting myself I don't know. I'm afraid of what you'll think about me when you find out I don't know. So when you see someone doing this, you know they have courage. And I find courage to be a prerequisite for any worthy thing, right? So, did I answer your question? I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of went on a rant there.
You did. It makes me think when we hire new staff here, sometimes they want to raise their hand and sound the smartest in the room. And I tell them, instead of saying something that you think is intelligent, ask an intelligent question. Because whether you're talking to clients or anybody,
100%.
You're going to glean from that.
100%.
And I just think you sound smarter. Ask an intelligent question.
Well, by the way, I know you don't know. I know you don't know, right? So, like, I mean, what you're saying is so operationally sound. Like, if we're briefing a particular operation, you know, mission set, you know, application, whatever it is, and if the new guys don't ask any questions, I'm coming for them after the brief is over. Yeah. I'll pull them aside like, hey, so you've never done this before.
And you have no questions.
But you have no questions. Yeah. Like, you're the best in the world at this, right? I don't have time to teach you out there. I can only teach you here, right? Yeah. And I tell people all the time, like, hey, man, you know, curiosity, when here's what the absence of curiosity tells me. The absence of curiosity tells me only one of 2 things. You already know everything, or you don't care. 100%. That's the only 2 things. So if you don't ask a question, you already know, or you don't care. And then I got to decide if I want to be in the company of someone who already knows it. If I'm too insecure to hang out with someone that already knows everything, just makes me feel bad about myself. And I won't be around people who don't care. Like, it's just the things I'm trying to do are too hard. Like, I want to have people around me that care as much and sometimes more than I do, right? So for me, the really long answer to your short question was I would encourage myself to be courageous and be curious earlier.
When you think of elite performers, whether it's Navy SEALs, NFL,
business,
entrepreneur business, and you were a financial advisor, we talked about that
I didn't make it, man. So, like, all the financials watching this, like, you're selectively tougher than a Navy SEAL. Like, so, I mean, I also probably wasn't in the right headspace either. And I had some amazing bosses. They were incredible. But it just wasn't the right thing for me at the right time. And it is hard, man. It is, like, I'm sensitive, man. I can't handle rejection. Like, buddy, the first few years of this, it is nothing but rejection. 100%. So you got to have thick skin.
But when you think of NFL or Navy SEAL, what's that elite thing that they have that you can, to your point earlier, maybe they're asking the questions, but you can see that guy has a chance to be special. Like, what do you see?
So some of it, I think there's genetic predispositions for gifting, right? And so when you see someone doing kind of what they're physiologically built to do, and they found their way into that, that's really fun. But I tell you, if you don't add discipline to that physiological gifting, that genetic predisposition from it won't last, right? One of the things I've always seen I've seen really 2 things. I've seen conviction and curiosity. Those are the 2 persistent things that I see. One, conviction. you know absolutely why you're here. The most elite people I know are the most intentional people I know. They may be wrong, but they are not wandering. They are trying to get something done. And their intentionalism, that clarity of purpose, allows them to recover from mistakes faster than anyone else. Because all of getting up is getting up and then dusting yourself off and spinning around and going, oh, there it is. Yeah. And so conviction gives you this really fast reset, recalibration, right? And then, you know, they care more about winning than looking right. So they're very curious. They're knowledge carnivores, right? Like, you know, I always tell people, you heard me say, I say, you know, elites are curious. They want to find out. They don't want to get found out because know that what they're doing tells the truth. And if you don't do the work, the world's going to know. So they are knowledge carnivores. They're hunting that 1%. Because here's what I know. As an apex predator, I'm going to go up against another apex predator sometime. And oftentimes that conflict, the outcome is it's a 1% thing. And so do I want to be lucky, you know, and find that 1%, or do I want to have it in my hip pocket, right? So, but that would say, you know, the two things I see consistent: ball field map, battlefield map, boardroom map, the most elite performers. And there's a difference between elites and elitists, and we could circle back that to a minute. And it's all semantics, but it's how I feel. The thing that's always there when you're dealing with an elite performer is they have conviction and they have curiosity. Those are the two things. It's like the left and right hook on adversity.
Makes sense. And what is the difference in your mind from elite and elitist?
Yeah. So for me, an elitist is always filling themselves up. I mean, it's another cup of them, whatever it is. It's like, whatever it is, it's self-serving and it's growing. And honestly, that's a fear-driven thing, right?
Security.
Elites are almost reckless with their gifts and abilities. I mean, they're to the average eye, they're recklessly generous with their gifts and abilities, right? And I love telling the story about Ray Lewis. I don't know if he remembers this. This is back in '97. But in theory, we're all there to beat him out, right? Yeah. Room full of linebackers, right? And he was pretty well entrenched, even after one season. But, you know, in theory, that's what camp's for, try to figure out, you know, who's going to make it. And I watched him during a meeting. Marvin Lewis was our defensive coordinator then. And I watch him asking other linebackers what they see, what they think, right? And he's telling them what he sees and what he thinks. And I was, at the Naval Academy, we live like that. Hey, next man up. Never be the last man with a secret, right? But I was so impressed by that. And so he came up to me. He's like, hey, Navy, what do you got? I said, I got one question. He goes, yeah. I said, why are you doing that? Like, why are you telling everybody your secrets, right? And his answer was what I hoped his answer would be. He goes, hey, everybody gets the ring or nobody gets the ring. Everybody gets the ring or nobody gets the ring. Like he knew the game. He knew how it works, right? And the second part of it was great. And he goes, I ain't scared. And he didn't say that in like this chest beating thing. Yeah. He said it acknowledging that the reason people don't share is they're scared. Like Elon Musk has this kind of really interesting opinion on why he doesn't patent as many things as he could. And part of it's noble. Like, hey, if I know where the fire extinguisher is, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm not going to hide it. I want everybody to know where the fire, especially the things that he's working on that he genuinely believes can save the world, right? But he also paints himself into a corner where he has to innovate. Like he has to, like he's given his adversary the current best thing, knowing it's going to make him become the ever better version of himself. So for me, elitists are always filling themselves up. Elites are always pouring themselves out. You
kind of answered the next question, but I'm still going to ask it. Yeah. Like in thinking of those people that are those studs, is it, what percentage do you think is those natural abilities and versus
I don't think anybody that's truly elite it's all natural. I think it's too, I mean, you can be physically gifted, genetically predisposed to something, and it'll get you to the pros, but it will not keep you here. There's two kind of guys wearing helmets on Sundays in the NFL. There's guys that wanted to be excellent, and they have the tools to help them become excellent. And then there's guys that want to stay, right? And so I don't think anybody's genetically gifted enough or predisposed enough to stay anywhere. You might be gifted enough to get there. But when you get there, there's going to be other people who are as gifted as you, and then they want to do the extra things. Like I have this keynote, it's called On Championing, right? And what I talk about is my observation. So one, if you put an ing on the end of anything, you just made it a verb, right? So if you're championing, you're just producing championships over and over again. And what I've seen about championing organizations is there's always four things. There's passion, talent, precision, and endurance. And the higher up you go, the less passion and talent matter. And it's not because they don't matter, it's just everybody's got it. Passion and talent's the price of admission, right? So what's left is precision and endurance. And I think this is where the difference starts getting made. For me, and this is semantics, by the way, like precision is not being right more. Like there's few things that bother me more than someone goes like, she gets stronger as the game goes on, or no one gets stronger as the game goes on. What you're seeing is someone who degrades more slowly, right?
Sure.
So for me, precision isn't being right more, it's being wrong less. And endurance is being wrong less than longer than your competition. I mean, that's one of the things we talked about yesterday is like, one of the greatest advantages you give your clients is you're wrong less. It's you see the value of a great wealth manager and a team during down markets, right? Like that's where you see it, right? And so for me, that ability to get there, the advantage, you and I talked about this equation that I have. When I was bad in football, I had to find this survival mechanism so I don't die during football practice in Garland, Texas in the summer, right? And this is back when like the water break was optional, and then your water was actually just a hose stuck to a PVC pipe that had holes drilled in it, and you know you're about to drink after the dude who has mono. So I'm like, this is gonna suck, and I wasn't good. So I was like, man, how do I not die during football practice? And I actually wrote this down. I have a 3x5 card still. My mom says she has it at her house, but the equation was angles plus allies plus advantages equals achievements. And angles are the things we can control, understand our craft, better, faster, smarter, stronger, right? Allies are making sure we run with people who mean what they say as much as we do and who will remind us what we said when it gets hard, and we'll take it when we remind them. Advantage is what we're talking about here. And the way in my brain and in that the achievement equation, I've always said advantages are treasure and talent. And the reality about advantages is you're very rarely the source of either of them. You're just the steward of them. And what that means is, and regardless of how much treasure and how much talent you have, it's still just 1/3 of the equation. And I kind of brought the achievement equation back out because I remember one of my daughters goes, Dad, I can't. And I was like, hold on. Like, listen, saying I can't do something, like deliberately selecting out of something is not humility. It's not genuine humility. Genuine humility is not thinking less of yourself. Genuine humility is thinking of yourself less. It's a frequency thing, right? And so I said, hey, to say you can't do something is actually pretty arrogant, because what you're saying is I know everything I need to know about the thing and everything I need to know about myself. It's pretty bold statement, right? I'm 52, I'm still learning about myself, right? And so to bring it back to your answer, what I think is that talent, talent's one of the four. You have passion, talent, precision, doors. Talent's real. There's no reason not to talk about it. Like you can't train 4.2. You can find 4.240, but you can't train it. You can find 4.3 and make it a 4.26 through efficiencies, right? So it's useless to not acknowledge talent. All I'm saying is talent's not enough, right?
Yeah.
So for me, where people start falling away from this thing they could have done and would have done is they just showed up with talent and infrequent and unmastered passion. And sometimes, for me, talent's a line of credit. And you draw down on it against the endeavor. Mm-hmm. And if the endeavor's more than the credit line, you better have something there, right? Mm-hmm. So, because the mountain makes all men and women average if you're aiming high enough. And if you don't start these things with angles and allies advantages, you're not going to make it. And if you somehow do, you won't stay, right? It's a little bit of a tortoise and a hare kind of
Makes
thing.
Sense. I'm a believer in typically in life, like you can achieve a lot if you're willing to sacrifice.
Buddy. Yeah, you can only carry so much weight to the high and hard X, right? So a lot of it is shedding. Like, what do I shed? Like, what do I shed? What is, this is the only agreement we've ever made as a human species. We haven't agreed on anything other than this, 24/7, 365. We've universally agreed to the day cycle, not even the calendar, but 24/7, 365. We've agreed on that, right? And so that's the one thing you and I have the same amount of, right? Mm-hmm. And so the person that can sacrifice, can steward their time the best is often going to win because they're using that one finite resource. Like Notre Dame and I both had 60 seconds on a Saturday, right? So who uses the time best? And what sacrifice is a reallocation of time. It's what do I not do so that I can do? And I've always told my daughters, like, discipline is more don't than do. It's more what do I not do instead of what I do.
In that same vein, what does elite preparation look like? I mean, I think that could be imagined different ways. Like, what is an elite person?
Yeah, it just depends on the endeavor. Like, it's reduction. you know,
But in your experience, though, like in the
yeah,
NFL or Navy SEALs, there's something that you go, man, that guy gave up that or did this.
100%. There's always something. I mean, and it's what they won't put on their gear. It's all these other things, right? And it can be as evidentiary as you see it, right? Or it can be as disciplined as you see it when no one else is looking by the things they don't do. Like they don't go out and party that night. They don't do like
the little things.
Yeah, and it's a million little 5 seconds decisions. I don't know the math on that, but a million times 5 seconds is a lot of time you just got back in your pocket, right? But one of the things I've always noticed is people. You've heard me. I think in terms of maps, right? Like I already said this. Like my favorite weapon is the map. So for me, all a map is 5 things. It is 4 borders and an X that you think is right, and the borders are more important than the X. Because the X is based on what you know right now. Given what I know right now, that's where I want to go.
So it could change.
More will be revealed. Yeah, you get over there, you're like, I didn't see that, right? But the borders matter so much because the borders keep you on the map. And for me, the borders are the line between always and never. Whatever those, moral, mental, spiritual, physical, money, time, travel, whatever you want your 4 borders to be, knowing what you're never going to do is the most important thing. Like, hey, no and never. And moving things from the always to the nevers. Like, when you're in hour 20, there's things we were always going to do. Yeah. And I said, like, nope, never going to do that again. So you move from that. Sometimes things go from the nevers to the always, but most of the time, it's the things going from the always to the nevers. And that's called sacrifice.
Yeah. When the pressure is the highest, what do you think? What do you think those elite people do? What are they doing different when the pressure is the highest? And
well, I think everybody does this. I think everybody listening to this or watching this is elite at something.
Okay.
I think the world may not acknowledge that or enough as elite, but you look at a young mom doing something that only she can do. I mean, there's an elite application of this mothering gift right there, right? So, so the breakfast table. What's elite on the breakfast table? What's elite on the boardroom, ball field, battlefield, breakfast? So, what I think is consistent across that is what you're seeing. We talked about this upstairs. One of the questions I get asked a lot is like, hey, what did you learn going through SEAL training? I go, nothing. And they go, what do you mean? Because it's an atypical answer. And I go, no, what I learned when I was going through SEAL training was who was telling me the truth and who was lying to me. Because you don't have time to learn going through that. All you have time to do is remember. Like, and so my deal, that's why I love podcasts and stuff, because it's an opportunity for me to learn from you what you had to learn the hard way, and now all I have to do is remember it, right? So what I think is the most elite performers, they have an ability, they've massed enough knowledge and enough scar tissue from themselves or the people around them that they're able to remember in those moments rather than have to learn in those moments. I was working with a UFC fighter one time, and I said, hey, man, if you and I are fighting and you're learning and I'm remembering, I'm going to win. He's like, really? I'm like, no, it's a metaphor. Like, you're a UFC fighter. Like, I'll cheat. I'll hit you with a piece of wood. But the point here, the point is like, you don't have time to learn what to do. All you have time is to remember what to do, right? So I think that distinction is elites draw on this library of lessons learned that allow them to remember in those acute moments rather than learn.
What's the biggest leadership failure that you see in businesses or those lines of work that you see?
I would tell you that I think leaders have to resist the urge to act like they know everything. Like I work for Admiral McCraven. I work for amazing leaders, right? And those guys, I mean, Admiral McCraven was a SEAL Team 6 guy. I mean, and I remember him asking a question that as a SEAL operator, you ought to know, but it was about proficiency on a particular weapon system, right? I know he shot that thing, and I mean he knows how to do it, right? But it did 2 things to me. One, it told me that he needed me, and I love being needed, right? Sure. So I think leaders sometimes think that someone's following you because you're the best at what you do. You do need to demonstrate skill, but people will follow you if you let them know you need them. Like that's a powerful thing. So I think leaders need to be more comfortable being authentic and imperfect. And the other thing it told me is he's using his time right. Like we don't need him on the range, like we need him making decisions that we can't make. So one, it told me I was needed by him, which who doesn't want to hear that? And then second is like he's using his time well because he's not using his time maintaining proficiency on something he's probably never going to use again unless he just wants to. And if he is, a series of things have failed, right? Yeah. So he's using his time well, and he needs me here. And I think leaders are well served to let their people know they're not perfect.
I like that. When you think of accountability in the boardroom or in businesses, how would you advise somebody to have that SEAL level of accountability where they're called out on things?
Well, I think if the mission matters most, that's why I think standards are really important, because when you have a high standard, you're talking about the performance, not the person.
Exactly.
Like, you miss that tackle. Like, you're not a bad person, but
so it's not person.
Yeah, so you critique the performance, not the person. And I think how you do that, I think when someone knows you need them, they take criticism really well. Most people really want to be coached. The people who don't want to be coached are just people that weren't coached well on the way, right? So I think that creating an environment where, to go back to this championing concept, I was working with an NFL coach, and it was cool. We had this. I don't want to say his name because I haven't asked him his permission, but he wouldn't care, but still, out of respect. And he loves people. He's like this people person. He's really fascinating. He's a really neat guy to be around. And he said, make no mistakes. And when he said that, I kind of flinched, and he saw it because he sees everything. And as we were walking out the field, he goes, hey, when I said make no mistakes, you flinched. Why? I go, I'm going to answer your question, but it's not a critique. Like, I haven't done what you've done, so I'm just going to answer your question, do with it what you will. I said, these guys are geniuses. All of them are physical geniuses. More of them are geniuses than they know intellectually, because you can memorize a playbook and recall it under pressure. I mean, like, the wiring for genius is there. And when you tell genius to make no mistakes, you deny yourself the creativity of genius, right? If Barry Sanders is your running back, two plays: Barry run left, Barry run right. You just take notes. You're like, oh, no one else can do that. Or, oh, that's a new play. Other guys can do that, right? And so when you create an environment where it's hey, I need you, just make new mistakes, that's an environment where you're often going to get the best of people. And they'll take criticism well, because you're critiquing the performance, not the person.
You've had so much leadership experiences, leading others and being led. Is there a moment where you were led by somebody that just inspired you, or like a big thing that you learned from them?
I'm really, really fortunate in that, man. I'm really fortunate that I had amazing. I mean, I went to the Naval Academy. One, we had really world-class coaches. I mean, our offensive coordinator at the time was Paul Johnson, who went and became the head coach at Georgia Tech. Gary Patterson was the safeties coach. He went over there to TCU. Phil Emery was our strength coach. He ended up being general manager of the Chicago Bears and player personnel for Atlanta Falcons. So I had amazing leadership on the ball field, but also in the battlefield. I mean, I went to the school that produced Roger Staubach and Admiral Stockdale and Ross Perot and just the list goes on. And so it is hard for me to pick out the great leadership. What I will tell you is there's this very small square on every map I've been on that happens half a dozen times, where you just see someone who be as sacrificial and clear and capable as you want them to be. And, I've had that hundreds of times. By design, that's just who I choose to follow, right? So it's a hard question to answer for the best reason possible.
Makes sense. And what does never quit mean when you hear somebody never quit? What does that look like in real life?
So this is a semantics thing too. Yeah. Like, we got to be careful with this thing, never quit, because the reality is we quit all the time, right? Like, hey, I was going this way to come here. There's a traffic jam on 35, so I quit going this way and started going this way. In the lexicon that word never quit usually means, it's what I tell you is, like, always quit doing things that aren't going to get you where you said you were going to go. Never quit trying to get to the high and hard thing, right? Like, for me, there's a difference between being finished with something and something being final, right? Like, I this real, I always tell people, like, hey, there's no X on the map you get to where everything is great. There's no house, spouse, car, like, whatever. I've always felt like there's X's on the map worth going to and people worth going with, and you bounce around towards Jesus till you meet him. And so for me, the term never quit means never stop trying to do these high and hard things. Never stop trying to find that X or pay attention to the next higher X, right? So for me, if it's right and it's virtuous and it helps others, never quit trying to get it done. But quit every conceivable way that's making getting there harder and slower.
I like that. When you look back at your life, what do you hope to remember that you stood for, Clint Bruce?
that's a tough question, right?
I know. I'm sorry.
No. I think each map kind of carries its own. Like for me, you've heard me say this. I just want to be the kind of guy my girls want to marry. Like I said, I just want to be worth my girls want.
That's easy to say, but that's a big thing, right?
I mean, how I love their mom, how I'm setting pace, and I want that person to be purposeful, passionate, protective, and a provider. And if he's not those four things, I'm not going to have to scare him off because my girls aren't going to want him.
Sure.
If he has those four things, I'm still going to scare him off. I'm like, come on, 2 men here, 1 man leave. And but on the breakfast table, I just want to be hey, he loved his wife and daughters well, and he pointed people towards Jesus, and he used his time. Okay. And if I get that, I'm good, man. I'm money.
I like that.
So,
well, let's do a little rapid fire, and we'll wrap it up with this.
There's no math. Is there math in this? Because don't let the Naval Academy thing fool you, man. I played football. So,
hardest day of Navy SEAL training.
I think it's different for everybody. There's not a universal hardest day. There was hardest days, and it was any day that we ran. The first time I ran 8 miles in soft sand.
You're a marathon runner, right?
Downhill. Man, the SEAL training gets everybody. Like, no one's good enough to just show up, right? But, like, so for me, it was the first time I ran. I remember my first conditioning run after leaving the NFL and showing up. And the instructors are driving next to me in the ambulance. And the instructor leans out and was like, hey, sir. And, like, this, like, dripping, indignant, not a good word. And he goes, you are so far behind your class that we cannot effectively respond to a medical emergency up there. Like, this is a safety violation, being so far back here with you. And I was like, oh, this is going to be pretty hard. But I was like, how much running do we do every day? Like, I'm going to have to do that a lot. So that for me was the first, like, oh, okay, I'm not built for this.
I can see that. Most important leadership trait?
Humility. There's 2, clarity and humility, those 2, so...
morning routine, something that you do.
I mean, I get up. I've always wanted the Bible to be read to my daughters by their dad, and so I've always said, "Hey, this is a letter from your father read to you by your dad." So every morning I read a chapter in the Bible and I video it and send it to them, and so I do that. And man, for my faith, it's been great because there's been a lot of times where I haven't wanted to read the Bible, like because I'm mad or disappointed or ashamed or embarrassed or something. And by 9 o'clock, my daughters will be like, hey, Dad, you going to send us the Bible today? So I got to read it. And I'm like, I can't tell you how many times I read the Bible. I'm like, is that new?
Well, you got a good voice for it, too.
Well, I'm like, is that new? Has that always been in there? Like, I'm pretty sure God just edited that one in there. Right? I mean, it's been there forever. I was like, So, I mean, it's this amazing message. But that's the biggest thing that I do consistently.
Other than the Bible, is there a book that changed your life?
Man, there's so many. I'm always reading. I would tell you Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield, about the Battle of Thermopylae. You ask anybody in the Special Operations Committee, they'll tell you Gates of Fire.
I've never even heard of that one. I read a lot.
It's incredible. It's an incredible book. Pressfield's very gifted. I would say Gates of Fire was a significant, but there's a book out right now called Primal Intelligence by a guy named Angus Fletcher out of Ohio State, and it's profound. And it talks about how the absence of we don't lack imagination, we lack the necessity for story, right? And so what happens is the absence of story is what fostered imagination in the first place. And he's so good. He was a neuroscientist that went into screenwriting, and he really helped rewrite some of the special operations selection, because sometimes we come out of an academic environment that's just doing the best it can, but it produces people that think in terms of probability versus possibility. And we have to think in both possibility and probability. And if all we can think of is improbability, then we got limited outcomes. But if we can remember how to think in terms of possibility, and that's, I mean, I'm reading that. I started reading it again after I read it the first time. So I'd say Gates of Fire is a really, really powerful book. Legacy about the All Blacks is another great one. But that Primal Intelligence is it's a book I'd give all your people.
I'm ordering it for sure. And last question of the day: one rule you never break. That's a tough word, never, but or try not to break.
Yeah, I mean, don't lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. Or never, I mean, you'd be wrong, right? But yeah, I mean, just mean what you say.
I like it.
What's the Bible say? Let your yes be your yes. That's it. Let your yes be your yes.
Well, thank you so much.
No,
Clint.
thank you, man. I appreciate it. This is fun.
Thank you for joining, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to share it with anybody who you think would enjoy a conversation. From NFL player, Navy SEAL, Clint Bruce.